All right, I think we are live. Jackson, our engineer, thank you. I'm Chris Epting, author and music journalist, back again with my friend Dave Mason, the legendary Rock and Roll Hall of Famer. Dave, how are you doing?
I'm good, Chris.
Good to see you again. You know, we've been talking these last couple of months about Alone Together Again, your re-recording of your legendary landmark 1970 album, 50 years old, and we've been having a lot of fun discussions. You've got another new video coming out next week for a reimagining of one of the classic songs off of Alone Together, right?
World in Changes, yeah.
World is still...
We got a little reggae version, man. Yes,
little reggae version, kind of feels kind of Split Coconuts, kind of island style, like you're going back to, and the world is still definitely changing under our feet, so the song is certainly appropriate. But here's the deal today. We've got some things to happen. I've got some great questions from people for Dave, and not just for Dave, though. We have a special guest joining us today, kind of like we did with our friend Bonnie Bramlett last month, Dave. Only our friend today is a guy, for one thing. His name is Brian Wheat, one of the founding members of the legendary band Tesla. Brian, are you there from Texas?
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
How are you, man?
Hey, Brian.
I'm good, guys.
So, like, people might wonder, Dave Mason and Tesla, what's going on here? The reason this kind of came together, it's interesting. First of all, Brian, congratulations on your book, your new memoir I'm going to hold up here, Son of a Milkman. Now, this is kind of the tie-in. I had the honor of co-writing this book with you, Brian's new memoir. I want to first call out the Tesla fans, too. Tesla Nation has been all over this book. Thank you so much. It's in its second printing already. It's like second month, so we really appreciate that. And I was working with Brian up in Sacramento on the book, and he said, what else are you up to? And I said, well, I'm working with Dave Mason on his book. And Brian's eyes lit up. He right away fires up the album Alone Together, cranks it on his home system, and starts telling me how much he loves Dave Mason and knows all about Dave's career. And I thought, well, this is really cool. So for the first part, we're going to have some news in a couple of minutes about your guys' new friendship. But Brian, you love the album Alone Together. So, I mean, what is it about the record that always did it for you?
Well, I think it's one of the all-time classic records ever made. You know, it's right up there with McCartney's first album, the McCartney Bowl of Cherries album, Jimi Hendrix's first album. You know, it's just one of the Rod Stewart's first album. It's just one of those, like Every Picture Tells a Story. It's one of those classic records that you know every song on. Right. And, you know, me growing up in the 60s with all my brothers and sister being older than me, I heard that coming out, you know, very early. I was 6, 7 years old, and I remember hearing it on the radio. And it's one of those classic records. You know, it's right up there with, like I said, with Every Picture Tells a Story, McCartney, whatever, any of those.
And to your point, I mean, the fact that it's Dave's first solo record, it kind of sets this tone of what's going to come later. Here we get this guy who's been in Traffic already. He's already played with Hendrix, with the Stones. He's got this pedigree in his early 20s, but he launches a solo album, and it really sets a tone for what's going to come in terms of quality of songwriting, guitar playing, the band members, and all that. Dave, what's it like for you when you hear somebody in another really established band like Brian and Tesla reacting to your music that's 50 years old now?
Wow.
And I got to add, I really like his vocals on the album as well.
Which is interesting because the reason Dave recut it was he wasn't happy with the vocals, right, Dave? I mean, that was part of what drove you to it.
No, but I'm never, you know, it's just, you know, finally realized I'm never going to be Jackie Wilson, Marvin Gaye, or. But I just like, but yeah, I don't know. You know, the thing about it is that, yes, I guess it lacked. The songs were just, it was good. The songs were good. And it was simple. It's just acoustic guitar, electric guitar, drums and bass. And it worked. So, but I think if I'd have been able to, like those guys that played, all those great players that were there, if I'd have had a chance to go out on the road for like a month with those songs and those players, that would have been just an extra little something. album that would just.
So we're talking Delaney,
Like
Graham, Leon Russell, all kinds of folks.
Keltner, Jim Gordon. I mean, you had great drummers on there. Christ's sake, Carl, just great play. Larry Nachtel, brilliant, great organ player, bass player. So yeah, would have been great to have just been able to go out live and do, have that little edge there. But hey, it was great.
Hey, guys, a lot of good questions today. I want to get to a couple of them quickly. Jeff C. had a question for both of you guys. How has your guitar playing evolved with all the changes in technology? Do you embrace it, or do you kind of prefer the old school?
I don't know, Brian. What you?
Technology, Brian, from when Tesla started in the 1980s. How is it today?
As far as guitar playing or bass playing?
Oh, for you, bass playing.
I'm a bass player and Dave's a guitar player.
Right, for you, bass.
No, I'd still plug in a Hofner or a Thunderbird into an SVT, and that's what I do. I just go.
Right.
I don't like, unlike Pro Tools, a lot of people will cut their bass up and match it all to the drums perfectly. And I may do that only now if there's a glaring mistake, but the rest of the performance was amazing. I might fix the one little bit, but some people chop the shit out of it. So I think that's one thing that's in, kind of with new technology that people have been able to do is make these records on Pro Tools.
Right.
And just edit the shit out of it. It's not really what you played anymore. So we did a series of records a couple of years ago, and we did one of Dave's songs on it, Dear Mr. Fantasy. It was the Reel to Reel records. And we said, look, let's go back and pretend it's 1973. Okay, so no Pro Tools, no automated consoles, nothing. 24-track machine. That's it. I don't even know if they had a 24. Did they have 24 tracks back then, Dave?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was it.
Not back in the traffic. Not in the traffic days. I mean,
But in the mid 70s.
But in the 70s, they did.
The 70s, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So we
I have reel to reel right here, Brian.
Yeah, there you go. And it was one of the most enjoyable records we ever made. We got up in the morning. We listened to whoever's song, because it was all covers from people from the 60s and 70s. We listened to whatever song it was we were going to learn that morning, had breakfast, went in, learned it, played it, and had it finished by the end of the day.
Cool.
Not mixed, but recorded. So
yeah.
that was pretty, and that was all old school. So I think, I like old school, yes.
Dave, what about you? Technologically, have things changed much for you as a player, or are you kind of like plug and play like Brian?
Well, I mean, as far as just playing goes,
yeah.
I mean, I have the only thing that I use is I have a Bradshaw rig, but it's a pretty small. It's not a huge setup. Bob Bradshaw at TC Electronics makes, I think, the perfect little it's switchable thing, but mostly it's just for me, and I run it through two Fender Blues DeVilles, but it's got some, it has some echo and delays, a little clean, crunch and lead. It's all he's got the whole preamp stage, which is all to I basically use the Fender amps just for the speakers. So stage-wise, that's pretty much what I do. I just, just clean sound, crunch sound, lead sound. Boom. Done. In the studio, yeah, I got Pro Tools. I mean, I'm screwing around with stuff back there. I mean, for my limited abilities, i.e., especially keyboard-wise, it's great for me to have when I'm working on tunes. Mm-hmm. Because I can put a basic, I can put the drums, the bass, the keyboards, the vocals, and the guitar, which I've just been doing as a couple of things. It's just, but it'd still be great, say, well, here's, take it to a band and cut and go in and cut it live. It's a performance. The thing about live stuff it's like anything. It's just you're really, first of all, it's always the same thing. It's the song, the song, the song. First, you got to have a song. And then you need a performance, and that's what you try to catch is a performance. And that
Brian, you know, it's funny, and when you mentioned you guys just waking up, rolling down, and playing a song a day, working with Dave on his book, it's interesting when Traffic was living communally in the Berkshire cottage. There's that kind of vibe too. They're waking up at whatever time, rolling out,
we
just
in a
playing,
studio
and it's like that. And I think people in Dave's book are going to learn a lot. And so, the same way that you unpacked a lot of Tesla history, Dave, this is the first time I think that a member of Traffic has ever written a memoir. So there's going to be a lot of that kind of organic sensibility of how music was created in 1967. Beth had a question. You guys are both dog people. I am as well, and Beth is as well. Beth called out, wanted to know about your Maltese dog, Star, Dave, who I've had the pleasure of meeting. And Brian, both of you guys take your dogs really seriously, and then you take them on the road and everything.
Well, mine actually, Star is more Winifred's dog that is gravitated towards me, and she's just a little love bug anyway. My little I was more attached to was a little. We had a Pomeranian that passed away actually Christmas Eve.
Sorry to hear that, buddy.
Crazy little thing. Bite everybody except me. Bite Winifred. Just crazy.
But you take Star on the road, Brian. Occasionally, your dogs go on the road too, right? I mean, these animals mean a lot to you.
Well, they're my children. I don't have children, so they are my children. But the funny thing is, me and Monique, Chris, as you know, we have a house in Italy. So when we go to Italy, we have to take the dogs, and people say, "Oh, do you put them underneath?" No, I don't. They ride in the plane, and I'm flying commercial, right? And I, don't tell anybody, but I kind of bullshitted them and told them I needed them for emotional support. So I filled out these documents, me, Monique, and Lips, my helper. So we roll up to the Dallas airport with 3 Jack Russells, and we're like, we're going on the plane. So we're flying all the way to Rome. So I say, look, Monique, let's sit in the back of the plane. So don't disturb anybody. And we get in there, and I got Spanky with me, and this woman sits down next to me, and she said, tell me that dog's not going to ride there the whole flight. I said, well, where do you think he's going to ride? Up in the luggage cabin? Yeah, here. I said, just imagine he's not here. He's great. He'll be fine. And, Spanky slept the whole flight and was fine. And she said, that was one of the best well-behaved dogs I've ever seen. I said, well, I told you. So, yeah, I take my dogs very seriously. And
hey, here's a question, but one more question, then we'll break our little news here. Adrian said, Dave, you made a guest appearance on the Wings album, Venus and Mars, on the song Listen to What the Man Said.
Yeah.
Brian, you're a huge McCartney fan. Question for Dave, do you have any fun memories of hanging out and jamming with McCartney and his band Wings in 75? I mean, I know you were playing down in New Orleans, and they came over and found you, right?
Yeah, I was playing a show at the Warehouse in New Orleans, and I think Jimmy McCullough and a couple of guys came over to the show the night of the show, and I had a day off the next day, and they were like, "Well, come on down to the studio." So I just went down there, and they were working on this tune. And Paul was like, "Hey, grab a guitar. Here, see this lick? Da 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 da." They said, "We're just gonna play that," and I'm like, "Oh, okay. We just the same lick, okay." So I just threw this little harmony on the last 2 notes of the lick. And he was like, oh, wait a minute. No. I said, well, just play it again and just check it out. Just okay, yeah, that's cool. I like that. So that was my
#1 record. Brian, you're a huge McCartney guy, as we talk about in your book, Son of a Milkman. You've met McCartney a couple of times. He's one of your musical heroes. It's got to be cool to know that Dave played on Venus and Mars, that Dave knew McCartney back in the 60s. McCartney was a big supporter of Traffic. He would come around the Berkshire Cottage. He actually filmed Traffic for Magical Mystery Tour, right, Dave? You guys were in one segment that didn't make the final cut.
We were supposed to be in that one thing that they did. I mean, I would go to his house, spend time over there, went to the Abbey Road a few times while they were doing Sgt. Pepper. Sang on a version of Across the Universe, actually.
right, I was just going to ask you, about that. That's not really that common knowledge, is it?
Well, it's not the version that's out. It was another. They had another version of it. There was a lot of people down there, and I was just there with a big group of people. So yeah, that. And yeah, there's some interesting memories.
You guys, okay, so Brian, you and Dave obviously have a lot of musical chemistry, a lot of historic chemistry. You like a lot of the same things. So when I was working with Dave, I was thinking, after being with you in Sacramento, your interest in Alone Together kind of got me thinking. I wanted you guys to at least meet. From that, you guys meet, and out of that comes this idea to actually collaborate together musically, right? Dave Mason with Tesla, which would have happened before COVID hit, but now it's still going to happen, hopefully soon in the next couple of months. Why don't you guys talk about that briefly, this idea of what you're going to do, what it's going to be like, and what sort of the plan is?
Well, I think once they let us get back to getting back around and stuff and figure out this COVID thing where we can all get in a room together, I think Dave was going to come to Sacramento, and we're going to set up, the five guys in Tesla and Dave. And Dave's going to play some leads, right? and do some of his classic songs, maybe a couple Tesla classic songs, whatever. We're just going to jam and really see what comes out of it. And just the idea of Tesla, this band from the 80s, right? That people said, oh, they're a hair band. I think we lie more in the sense of a classic rock band than a hair band. Absolutely. So I think it'd be really cool for a band like Tesla to play with a legend like Dave, who we all grew up on. I mean, we saw him at California Jam,
right?
And stuff, and we heard those songs, Only You Know and I Know, and We All Disagree and all that on the radio as kids. And, when I went to the guys after you said, hey, what do you think? I said, hey, guys, would you be interested? And they went, absolutely. Dave Mason, that'd be an honor. Jeff Keith's like, I'm ready right now. And everyone was real psyched up for it. So,
what I think is really amazing is you guys in Tesla are you're still fans yourself and connoisseurs of good music.
Dude, I got 7,000 records.
So here with Dave, you've got a guy, in addition to what Dave's done solo, this is a guy who connects you firsthand to Hendrix. He played with the Stones and the Beatles. So you'll be playing with the guy.
Hendrix.
Yeah, who's connected to everybody.
I mean, it's like playing with Paul McCartney or something. It's rock history.
Yeah.
Now you put me on the spot.
Well, yeah, but you got to play with McCartney. I didn't.
I think the collaboration's going to be incredible. Dave, are you excited about it?
Yeah, man, absolutely. I mean, I've been solo for so long, and but I miss playing, doing some collaborative stuff. It'd be interesting. I mean, it'd be kind of cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to doing it. It'd be great.
I think it's going to be cool.
I think once we get in the studio together and everyone kind of just settles down, relaxes, I think, something really cool will come out of it, because there's going to be a lot of vibes in the room, a lot of good vibes, and a lot of knowledge. I said, Dave's going to come in the room in school, Frank, and my Dave.
Actually, I just thought about it. I've actually got a song that's never been released that I'm going to bring you.
There, bring it. Love it.
Fantastic. And I don't want to miss a second of this. I want to be the journalist in the room documenting this whole thing. It's going to be cool.
I think you're going to have to be.
No visitors, Chris. I'm sorry, man.
We'll finish your book there. Hey, now on that note of who Dave's played with, another question here from John. Dave, can you explain what your contributions were to Derek and the Dominos, when they were getting going? Should you have received any writing credit for songs on the Layla album? Because that's another band that Dave finds himself, part of in the beginning.
That was just, I mean, all that was really I mean, I knew all those people long before Eric. I mean, when I say long, at least 3-4 years. I mean, I knew them all back from when I'd come over here and first saw Delaney and Bonnie at the Palomino in the Valley, and all those Tulsa boys, Carl Radle, Jimmy Karstein, that original band was killer. So they really all came out of the Blind Faith tour. with us opening with Delaney and Bonnie. So that's how Eric got turned on to all that.
Right.
And so because of me and I knew all, and it sort of I drifted into the beginning of Derek and the Dominos.
So right, and that was just when they were in England. You didn't come back over here for any of that.
All over in England.
What was the scene like, Dave, at Clapton's place when this thing is kind of coming together? I mean,
well, the sad thing about it is, and it's not anything that's not public knowledge. It's written about it itself. Is that unfortunately, Jim Gordon got him into heroin, and that's where he started. And so there was a lot of sitting around this beautiful big house in Surrey, doing jack shit, doing nothing. And I was getting we played a show at the Odeon. We were working on some stuff, and I just got, I was like, you know what? I can't just sit around here like this. I just up and said, guys, great. But hey, they went on and got that incredible album. So
that was right around the time you also played on All Things Must Pass by George Harrison. And Brian, I'm telling you, Dave, there's not a big.
You played on that too, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Evidently.
Yeah, Brian, he's touched everything. Aaron has a question.
Dave, George was such a great slide player. His slide playing, I think, was so gorgeous.
Well, on that note, Brian, Dave has a story. I don't want to give too much of your book away, Dave, but tell Brian about why George Harrison perhaps developed the slide style that he did.
There was an interview with him. It's a number of years back, and I just happened to be reading it, and he relates this story about coming to Croydon with Clapton, where I was playing. I'd been playing guitar with Delaney and Bonnie, and we were touring some shows in England, and we were playing at Croydon, and so they came down, and naturally it was like, Eric, Steve, well, you're going to sit in, yeah. And it's like George, it's like, well, man, come on, you got to. I don't know any of the tunes. It's like, well, I said, here. I said, if I show you this little lick, do you think you can, we can. So we sat in the dressing room, and I showed him this little slide lick that I played on a Delaney and Bonnie record called Coming Home. And it's a repetitive little slide lick. So I showed him the slide lick, and he came on, and we did it live. But in the article, he goes on to say it was that thing of Mason showing me that slide thing that got me into that whole playing slide guitar.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, I mean,
it's crazy.
Slide playing it developed. It was so gorgeous. And
Yeah.
But this is
like Free as a Bird. The slide he plays on Free as a Bird and make you cry. It's beautiful.
Well, but Brian, that's another example.
Fault.
That's Dave finding himself in one of these situations where these little historical moments, whether it's, all along the Watchtower with Hendrix or Street Fighting Man with the Stones, Dave just, again, had these opportunities that presented themselves. Hey, Aaron had a question for both of you guys. How rewarding is it to have 3 generations of fans at this point coming to your shows when you look out and see that? Brian, you first.
Amazing. Just the fact that I'm still playing 37 years later is amazing, right? When I was a kid and I had a dream, I wanted to be a rock and roll star, whatever that means, right? But today when I look out in the crowd and we're playing and I see a dude my age and he's got his dad with him and then he's got his son with him. And, sometimes I see kids out there that are 6, 7 years old singing every word to the Tesla songs better than our singer. Like they know the words. Sometimes Jeff forgets. Jeff has to have these teleprompters, and sometimes Jeff will forget the words. But these little kids, they know every word, and it's pretty cool, man, to see that you've reached. Obviously the people that grew up with you that were your age. But when their parents dig it and their kids dig it and their grandkids dig it sometimes, it's pretty rewarding. It's why you do it, I think. I know for me it is.
Yeah, Dave, what's it like for you?
Well, the same. You know, just the music's for you know, like it, you know, my thing is there is no old music. It's either just good or it's either, you know, it works or it doesn't. It's good or it's not. So, and it can be of any. It doesn't have to be specific to any age group. You know, it's like the Traffic stuff. You got all these young kids with Traffic. I mean, it's still great stuff. They had never heard it. It's all brand new. It's like, whoa. I mean, I get young kids come to these shows, like 15, 16-year-olds. And I'm out at the merch booth at the end of the show, and they're like, wow, man. It was like killer. It's like, yeah, well, that's live. That's for real. That's like, there's no smoking mirrors, okay? So, and they love it. It's like, you know, through it. Authenticity will reach anybody, whatever age it is. If you're authentic about things, you know, it translates to any age group.
Yeah, it's funny. Bob Lefsetz, the well-known music writer, and he runs the very popular Lefsetz Letter. He's had both you guys on his podcast. I think he totally understands both of your guys' approaches, and a lot of it comes down to what you just said, authenticity. He raves about both of you. He respects and appreciates, you know, what you both do, but that's what it comes down to. When he comes to see you live, it makes him feel like he's seeing real music played by real musicians, you know, and that at the end of the day is what it's all about. Dave, before we came on the air today, you guys were talking, and Brian was talking about McCartney, and you brought up Stevie Wonder as another example of somebody who's a real game changer, somebody who just comes at it and is so gifted that they change the industry. The question here from Rich, on your song, The Lonely One, Stevie Wonder plays a harmonica. How did that come about? And also, did you play together in the studio, or was it done separately?
We were working with the same producers at the same time in the same studio. So, and Stevie played some drums on something for me way back in the Headkeeper days.
Right.
I never used the track, but anyway, we were in the same studio with Malcolm Cecil and oh God, I forget his other name. Zoe Crofts. You know, I'd be there while he was cutting all those In the Key of Life stuff. You know, just laying down a drum track or something, putting the, you know.
Wow.
So, and I just had this song, and it was like, Stevie, would you play? You know, sure, man, no problem, dude. Yeah, man. And he goes in there and just, it's like one take, poof, and there's the harmonica on it. It's amazing.
Hey, I got a question for Dave. Am I allowed to ask a question?
Yeah,
take it away, Brian. Of course.
By all means.
Dave, how does it feel? Like when you talk about all your peers when you were coming up, like when I was coming up, that they're all legends. You know, McCartney, Lennon, Harrison, Stevie Wonder, Steve Winwood, Eric Clapton, George Harrison. You know, I mean, like when I talk about the guys I grew up with playing that were my peers at the same time, you know, we're not legendary. That's a pretty heavy thing to sit there and go, well, yeah, Stevie Wonder came around and played drum. I knew Stevie. Yeah, I knew Paul. Yeah, I knew Mick. I knew Keith. And these guys, you know, they're the legends of rock and roll music. That's got to be pretty heavy. Or do you even trip on it?
Well, yes and no. I mean, I don't know. I mean, the thing about it is with a lot of them, I was it was all just part of the scene that I was in. So,
I know, but it was so monumental, the scene, you know.
Great respect for their obvious talent and their abilities. But I guess at the time I was more just. I mean, looking when retrospect, when you go back over it, yeah, absolutely, it's like, wow. I mean, if I add it all up and just go, Jesus, how do you?
Because I mean, for me, it's like that was the richest period in music. You know, the '60s and the late mid '70s.
Yeah.
and especially for rock and pop music. And it's just like, it just blows my mind. Like, you'd all be hanging, all these guys, these legendary guys that are legends today, have influenced things I do, and Guns N' Roses and all the other bands that were my contemporaries. We didn't have that kind of scene, we just didn't. It was so cool to hear you tell stories about how you were all hanging out in London and just hanging out. And there was all these, David Crosby, all these guys you're talking about. Says, oh yeah, he came by. We had a sandwich, smoked a joint. It was great.
Of course, Stephen and those. I mean, obviously, because I knew Graham from the Hollies back in England.
Traffic did a tour at the Hollies at one point.
Well, he sort of got me introduced to, to them, and I was I'd sort of just moved to Hollywood in '69. And just sort of fell in with that whole, again, just fell in with that scene. But it was just, to me, it was just all part and parcel of, I mean, the music is what I was making. And like anything, I guess, part of it is like, if you're going to learn and you're going to, then put yourself around the best, if you can. And it turned out that I had opportunities that were just, how they happened is sort of it was happenstance, luck, right place, right time.
It's funny, you guys, before we wrap up, one thing I've, as an observer, working with both of you on your books, the reason I think the collaboration with Dave and Tesla is going to be so powerful is you both approach music in a very kind of blue-collar, workman-like way. You're very hardworking. It's about the music. You sort of put your nose to the grindstone and you do it. You don't get overly impressed with people. You just sort of do what you do. And what comes from that comes from that. And I think that's why I can't wait to see you guys get together, because I think your philosophies are very similar. So we got to get this done sooner than later. Before we go, a couple of things. We're going to pick 2 autographed merch packs to receive for Dave Mason stuff. Now, I have one winner is Beth C. And the other one, I didn't mention this question. It was more of a situation. A gentleman named Sean wrote this. I want to read it quickly. Sean broke his back in June 2019, and as part of his rehab regimen, his wife agreed to fly him to Toronto from the UK in March of 2020 for a Dave Mason show that actually was canceled that night. COVID was hitting the very next day, and this guy flew back home to the UK. So we're going to let Sean also win one of the prize packs. He certainly earned that. Dave, you wanted to know, is there ever what's a long wasted journey either of you guys have taken where that happens? Not wasted, but where you go and it doesn't quite work out the way you hope it's going to work out?
All the time.
For many.
More than not, right?
Right, exactly.
Well, here's the deal. For Beth and for Sean, who won, what I'm going to ask you to do, send your information, your address to info@davemasonmusic.com. The email is info@davemasonmusic.com. Send your contact info. We will get those signed prize packs off to you. But in the meantime, Brian, I want to thank you, buddy. Son of a Milkman is your new memoir. Super proud. Thank you for letting me work on this with you.
Thank you for working with me on it. And I can't wait for you guys to finish Dave's book.
Oh, we're going to have a lot of fun together. And again, Dave Mason and Tesla are going to get together as soon as possible to make some new musical history. Yeah. I'm super excited about that.
Dave, I can't wait to meet you in person.
Yeah, likewise, man. Likewise.
Much respect, my man. I'm gonna go play some of your songs right now and go cook dinner. I'm on a diet. They got me on a diet, Dave.
Well, that's okay. I've gone from 218 to 193.
Congratulations, my man.
I got to get in the 180s.
Yeah, I got to get down there in the ones again myself.
Well, listen, Dave. Dave. The new video comes out next week for World in Chains. We'll check that out. Alone Together Again is out. Buy it. You can go to davemasonmusic.com. There are signed copies, vinyls coming. This is a year-long celebration of the 50th anniversary of one of the great rock and roll albums of all time, Alone Together. Dave's re-recorded Alone Together Again. Brian and Dave, thank you. This has been a blast as always. Let's do this exact thing again once we're working. We'll do it together in Sacramento from the studio. Deal?
Yeah. We'll get the other guy. You know, I can't wait. It's gonna be a blast, man. We're just gonna have a good time and just rock and roll. You know.
All right.
And Dave's playing some solos.
Dave is playing lead. Absolutely. All right, guys. Thank you, and thanks everyone for watching. We really appreciate it. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you all.